Comus were, and in fact are, a British prog folk band. So they existed from 1969 to 1972 as a first stint, during which they released one album. They got back together briefly in 1974 for one more album, and then they reformed in 2008 and are still going, so that's definitely the longest stint, and they've released one more album. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the first album by Comus, and it's not my first time listening to it. I'm going to feel the need to give you a little bit of history here, my history of reviewing. I started reviewing albums after we'd moved house, and I had a longish commute to do into work, and I listened to radio for quite a while, and they got really fed up with modern pop music, particularly. So I decided I was going to get some albums and listen to them, and I did that for a little while. That stuff that I knew and liked, and then I decided it would be good to start exploring new stuff. So I started doing that, and I started listening to, particularly to prog rock albums, and exploring some stuff that I hadn't heard before, and decided I was going to start reviewing them. So I then started reviewing them on Facebook for the benefit of my friends, and that occasionally people were mildly interested, but not hugely. And I produced a list that I'd amalgamated from several places of the greatest prog rock albums. There was 200 odd of them that I reviewed, and then I threw in a few more because I decided I was going to turn it into a book. Not a book that's been published. It was basically a glossy PDF that I spent ages and ages formatting. And I decided to also include in that some reviews of albums that are on the peripheries of prog rock, and this was one of them. I then went on to do more mainstream reviews on a blog, and now I'm doing reviews, obviously, on a not Facebook channel, YouTube channel. So this was one of the ones that I reviewed for the book that didn't find itself into any kind of public eye before now, really. Um, and so I went back and looked at the reviews that I'd written, and I liked it. I tended to get a little bit more arty-farty in my reviews at those times. So I'm going to read this out. Okay, so I think it still applies, basically, which is why, right? Here we go. Imagine, if you will, a nice fluffy teddy bear. Now imagine that the teddy bear is trampled in the mud and torn apart by wolves. This album's a bit like that. It's 1971, and the musicians involved have flutes, violins, acoustic guitars, and hand percussion of the rattly, shaky kind, and some of the slappy, happy type. Add in a few singers, and you might think you're all set for folk music or psychedelic hippie stuff. Well, it is kind of the psychedelic hippie stuff, but as delivered by dark, twisted hippies, the type who would steal your lunch and only come out at night. Evil, vampire hippies. So this is dark stuff thematically and musically. The instruments are played and attacked in equal measure, and the assault is also on the rules of sweet music and on the listener. It's quite exciting, it's quite experimental, it's somewhat disturbing. I'm not entirely sure about their sanity, to be honest. They are very capable musicians, better than many psychedelic hippies, and they're very good at creating interesting atmospheres. The songs are about several things: violence, electroshock therapy, rape, two songs about rape, and other cheery stuff like that. If you can deal with the darkness, it's actually pretty good, although it still manages to be somehow somewhat pitch. End of the written review. So it was a few years ago when I wrote that. I have listened to a lot of stuff since then, fairly obviously. I remembered its darkness, but I didn't remember how well played it is. So I did enjoy it a lot musically. I think this is a really strong album, but I still think it is definitely, it has disturbing lyrical content and wouldn't be for everyone. Not disturbing in a way that I found particularly difficult, but my sensibilities are different from other people's, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not casting any kind of aspersions at anybody who doesn't share my own particular sensibilities. So if you're not up for stuff that's disturbing, then don't listen to this, I will say. But if you are, then musically, it's a really strong and interesting album. So that's what I think of this album. And as always, I'd love to know what you think of this album, if you've come across it before. It has a somewhat of a reputation amongst the prog rock fraternity as being a bit of a way out album. Yeah, so please do share by leaving me a comment, and that's it from me for now.
Bright the sunlight, summer day, Comus wakes, he starts to play, 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 play. Virgin fair smiles so sweet, Comus' heart begins to beat, 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 beat. Rise up, Comus, sing your song, bewitch the maiden.